We always ring the bell, so ring-a-ding-ding. Welcome to all of the Rotarians and our guests. This is the best cloud space in all of Rochester for fellowship and service. My name is Wayne Hodges, and for just a little bit longer, you've got to put up with me being your club president, and then we will move on. Will you all please rise and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance and paying respects to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the
United States of America,
and to the republic
that stands
one nation under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You all please now join me in reciting the Rotary four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it for all concerned? Will it build goodwill and benefit? Will it be beneficial to all? And will it be fun for all? Amen. Tim Duncan, will you please grace us with today's invocation?
Sure. Pandemic within a pandemic within a pandemic. Give us the strength to listen to our leaders, to speak out about injustice, and to be Rotarians, service above self. Be with our nation's law enforcement agencies and our nation's leaders so that they can comprehend the reasoning behind the recent peaceful protests to create meaningful change. The entire nation is hurting right now. Please help our leaders lead with conscience, our police protect selflessly, and allow everyone else to heal and come out stronger on the other side. In the name of God the Father, Jesus Christ the Son, Muhammad, Allah, Buddha, or whichever God you choose to pray to, please hear our prayer. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Tim. For any guests that are joining today, if you'll look at the bottom of your screen, you should have the choice of a chat feature. If you will touch that, you can then give us your contact information so that our membership committee can reach out to you and give you the information that you're looking for to learn more about us. Plus, we would like to learn more about you. So again, just if you would use that chat feature throughout this meeting, we would be very appreciative. Moving on to our 15th sign-on. I can't believe this, okay? Jerry Carvey, okay? Jerry, I wrote you down as the 15th person to sign on today. Congratulations. You are free from any fines.
Thank you kindly.
Now, I'm actually doing this meeting on my phone, so I'm going to assume that I'm going to be able to read the chat. If I can't, I'm going to have to ask somebody else to help me with that. But if you would, does anybody got happy bucks? I see a hi from everyone for Tim Duncan. Jeff Whitby says howdy. Tom says has happy June. David Early thought that was a great prayer. John Somerville is he's happy the stay at home is over. Well, I think you get a lot of votes for that one, John. Are there any other happy bucks? Tom is happy the school is almost over and his grandkids are happy. Mayor Barnett he's happy. John Somerville is happy. Well, that didn't take much. Jerry Gross is glad to be able to get out. And John Somerville says, thanks, Mayor. Anyone else happy bucks?
Are you got audio?
Well, Linda Eastman is happy that her family will be able to gather tomorrow.
Yeah, we are. John control.
So I hear Ernie Schaefer. Welcome, Ernie. Moving on to member birthdays. We've got 2 member birthdays today to acknowledge. One is George Crozier. George, according to our records, was born on June 11th. We don't know the year and don't want to know the year. And Marty Pavlik was born on June 12th. And so Will you all please join me in singing happy birthday to George and Marty? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, George and Mary. Happy birthday to you.
$5 each.
Yes, we got to get that in.
Wayne, you got to unmute. Hold on. Unmute.
Club anniversaries, we have one. Janet Drobnich. Janet joined our club 28 years ago today. Congratulations, Janet. That's a tremendous accomplishment. Moving on to club announcements. Bill Ebinger. Bill, I think you had a few words you wanted to say about the status of the gazebo out on Rotary Park.
Bill, you'll need to unmute. Bill, you need to unmute.
I don't know. Now that we got him muted, we might want to leave him there.
Okay, am I on now?
Yeah.
You're on now, Bill. We can barely hear you.
Okay, so yeah, something's going on with my computer now. I lost the viewing. So, but let me explain to, whoops, I got my technician here. Go ahead, keep going. No. I just wanted everybody to know where we stand on the gazebo project. We have decided on July the 21st, we're going to have a picnic in the park, and it'll start at noon. We'll start with our just abbreviated Rotary program, and then we're going to have a dedication of the gazebo. And looking forward to it. We're putting a program together, and hopefully everybody will be able to make it. I'd like to make sure that we have a head count, because we will have a few guests there. So to help Nino out with how many lunches we need, if you can make it on the 21st of July, you should let us know. And so we have that head count. I think that's it. Just mark it on your calendar. Oh, I should tell you where we are with our project. The gazebo is up. The lighting is in. If you haven't been by at night, I have the timer set from 8 until about 11. I didn't want to leave it on any longer right now, because I think if you leave the light on, then you're going to have people in there until we turn it off. So that's the way it sits now, but it's really spectacular at night. If you have a chance to see it, drive by and take a look. Next week, we're going to get the paver bricks in, and then the landscaping will start next week. We have a sprinkler issue, so we're going to have that taken care of. And hopefully we'll have everything up to par by July the 21st. I may call on a few of you to help the week before, just to make sure that the park is looking really good. So that's it.
Bill, thank you for your diligence. Okay, as far as the park, we would not be where we're at.
I think it'll be a great event. Yeah, I think it'll be a great event for our club and for the park, for sure.
Good. Thanks for that report. Moving on, you know, there are a lot of things that we get to do as Rotarians that are fun, that are things that we look forward to. And the inducting of a new member is always one of those. And today we have the opportunity to induct a new active member. His name is Jason Brainer. Jason runs his own law practice and has worked in the industry for 14 years. He practices employment, civil, and international law. He's also works part-time as a legal aid attorney through a legal aid and nonprofit in Southfield, Michigan. where he assists seniors and low-income individuals with a variety of legal matters. What does Jason do and to enjoy his activities? He enjoys most helping others and having the freedom to control his own schedule. I think a lot of us can vote with that, Jason. I can tell you from Jason was a referral from Rotary International, and I can tell you that during the process of him wading through us not meeting and deciding how to handle these things and process them, one of the things that impressed me the most about Jason is one of the visitors on our meeting early on asked for some legal help in terms of getting unemployment compensation. And Jason volunteered and said, look, give that person my phone number because I know exactly what to do to help them out with that. And I knew then and there that we had somebody that was interested in joining our club that had the right sentiment in his heart. So, Jason, you have been chosen for the membership in the Rochester Rotary Club because you do manifest those qualities of head and heart, needed to serve Rotary and impart the message of Rotary to those with whom you come into contact. I charge you to judge yourself by the Rotary four-way test in the things that you think, say, or do. I wish to impress upon you that you are being admitted not only to the Rochester Rotary Club, but also to a worldwide association of individuals dedicated to the Rotary motto of service above self. By virtue of your membership in this club, you will be welcomed into the fellowship of any Rotary club throughout the world. And there's about 35,000 of them. The honor and privilege of Rotary membership carries with it duties and obligations. You will be expected to attend the club's meetings regularly, actively participate in club service, and offer your knowledge, talents, and energy to the club in its efforts to serve our community. I now ask all Rotarians and guests to please rise. Jason, on behalf of the members of this club, I formally admit you to the membership of the Rochester Rotary Club. Fellow Rotarians, I commend to you our newest member, Jason Brainer, and charge all of you to welcome him and to engage him in our projects, fun, and fellowship. Please join me in giving Jason a warm virtual welcome via Zoom.
Welcome, Jason.
Welcome.
Yep, welcome.
Nice job, buddy.
All right, thanks a lot.
See, Mr.
Jason,
President.
did you want to say anything? You don't have to.
I guess you kind of put me in the spot, Wayne, but I do want to say that I'm very thankful to be here. And, I'm looking forward to working with everyone, getting to know everyone, and using, anything in my background and my professional experience that I can to help Rotary out and to help our community out, and continue to make it a better place to live. So I appreciate you all welcoming me to the club, and I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
One of the other
Hey,
things
Mr.
that
President.
we get,
Mr. President,
yes,
Mr. President,
yes.
can I say something? I'm sitting here watching Stuart eating his lunch. What's the deal here?
Well, it's a lunch meeting, Phil. What can I say?
Well, he should share with everybody.
Well, I'm sure he will to the extent that he can.
Stuart.
Moving on. One of the second things that we get to do that is enjoyable is from time to time we get to acknowledge another member's activities. Rotary International's founder, Paul Harris, once said that perhaps dreaming is not bad if one dreams good dreams and makes them come true. In Rotary, we make dreams a reality through extraordinary projects and activities here at home and around the world. These projects would not be possible without the generous support of Rotarians and friends of our foundation. The Rotary Foundation recognizes those individuals or clubs who contribute $1,000 or more annually to the annual fund, Polio Plus, or an approved foundation grant by inducting them as a Paul Harris Fellow. Today, the Rochester Rotary Clubs honors a dedicated member into our Rotary Foundation as a member of the Paul Harris Fellow. Paul Harris Fellow gifts enable Rotary's worldwide network of dedicated humanitarians to implement projects that address pressing needs in communities around the world. Because of these contributions, children are vaccinated against polio and other diseases. Adults and children alike can learn to read and write. Women are given microloans and vocational training that enable them to support themselves and their families in a healthy and dignified way. Teachers and school children have access to toilet facilities and clean drinking water. Scholars are able to study ways to prevent maternal and child mortality. Professionals around the world convene to discuss strategies for resolving conflict and fostering peace. Boy, we could use some of that right now. Today, we want to recognize our newest Paul Harris Fellow member for enabling Rotary to make an impact on individuals, families, and entire communities. On their behalf, I want to offer our sincere appreciation for ongoing generosity and perhaps you ask why this member is being honored. Well, this is this member's third Paul Harris, and his exemplary performance in the past year in building a dynamic and a membership committee and the new members ambassadors program. This has become a key reason for our membership growth of our club during this past year. During this past year, we have inducted 21 new members. 12 active new members, such as Jason, who joined us today. 2 past active members have rejoined the club. 2 additional corporate members have joined, and 5 new honorary members from our Interact and Rotaract faculty advisors group have joined our club. This has been, an outstanding impact on our club, and I think it's been noticed by all. Will you please join me in acknowledging Stuart Signer's outstanding contribution to our club during the past year?
Well deserved, well deserved. Yay!
Stuart, I have it on very good authority that our foundation committee chair, Ernie Schaefer, has your pin and has your certificate acknowledging this your third Paul Harris, and he will get it to you, I believe, by mail. Ernie, is what you've decided. So not knowing when we would meet face to face again, he's going to send it to you by mail. But from the bottom of my heart, a sincere thanks. I mean, you have done yeoman's work and demonstrated great leadership in this, and I cannot thank you enough.
Well, thank you, Wayne. That's very touching. I was not expecting this, and I think I've kind of found a little niche that I like to do with the club, and I think it's bringing great quality people into this group. And again, I've had a lot of people really help me along this path. So I just want to thank everybody that's been willing to help and support the membership committee, all the ambassadors that have come on and assisted with this process. And I'm just blessed and really, really thankful for being part of such a great club. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you again, Stuart. Thank you. Moving on. Rotarian of the Week, David Erdley. I believe you had an opportunity to identify another deserving individual.
Yes, I have, Wayne. It's hard because there's so many deserving people, but I'm gonna nominate John Somerville because of all of his incredible work with Zoom and helping us to meet virtually, and just all the work he's doing behind the scenes to help make our meeting possible. And he's wearing a Michigan t-shirt, and so go blue, John. Congratulations.
Thanks, David.
You're welcome.
That almost sounds like a bribe, David.
Really?
Oh, Lord.
Well,
congratulations,
he'll get the
John.
award someday because he's wearing a shirt.
What's that?
Will Phil get the award someday because he's wearing a shirt?
Yes.
Well, we're all happy about that. That's all I can say.
Bill, if you wear a shirt next week, I'll think about it.
John, please don't tempt him, okay? He doesn't need any help. We love him the way he is. I believe our sheriff this week is on the line. It's not that easy for me to see everybody running this meeting off of my phone, but Brian, are you there?
I am, yes. Can you hear me? Wait.
Yes, we can. I can hear you.
Great. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for, I don't know, you don't have much of a choice. They just made me the big picture here. Job to be the sheriff today, to find some of you. And I'm just going to start by looking at some of these Zooms. I'm on Zooms all day. And not that I've got this thing figured out, but some of you need a little help, and I can make some judgments based on what I see. First of all, just in simple one, like say for example, you look at David Erdley, and you look at those books behind David. You know, see those? Now look at Jerry Gross. See those books behind Jerry? Now you can tell Jerry actually uses his bookshelf. He reads those books. David Erdley hasn't looked at one of those books behind him in probably 15 years. So David, both of you, that's a $5 fine for both of you. Anyone with a fake Zoom background, Chief Shettenhelm, what the heck? I mean, it's obviously not night where you're at. I mean, I don't know who you're trying to fool. It's coming off as very cheesy and fake, and I don't like it. Where's Jay Eastman? Jay Eastman, I mean, look at you. This guy is either pretending that he's watching the Northern Lights, or it's some sort of tribute to the fact that weed is legalized here in Michigan now. I'm not sure which one, but either way, Jay, it just looks weird. You're like a floating head in the universe. I'm switching my view because I don't feel comfortable watching you. If we could get maybe a wellness check on David Archibald and Roger Roller, if we could get someone to just maybe head over to their houses and make sure they're okay. Just feel like maybe we should just make sure they're alive. I don't know, Roger, we love your, oh, here we go. It worked. He's back. What else do I have here? If you are Phil Lohman, obviously you've got a lot of issues. Phil, thanks for scaring our new visitor by just kind of blurting out an old man voice, hey, somebody's eating their lunch. I mean, geez, you sound like you're straight from the home. It's a $2 million peso fine for you. What else do we have here on Zoom? John Somerville, I look at you. I mean, you're a good-looking guy. Can you give me can you look to the side for a minute and then give us a really good office Jim Halpert look, just so we can see what that would look like? Oh, God, that's so good. One more time, if you don't know who this. Yeah, that's really good. That's really good right there. That's solid. And Wayne, just want to tell you, I like your belt choice today. It's always nice when we get to be about 2 inches from your crotch. So just remember that when you use the cell phone for Pledge of Allegiance and anything else where we have to stand on behalf of everyone on this call. Maybe turn off your camera. Just saying. I don't know, is Bill Ebinger still on here twice? I don't know, Bill had some sort of weird thing where he was on here twice earlier. I don't know if he's got that figured out. I'm trying to scroll back and forth and see where he's at. Stuart Signer wants you to know that he has more office lights in his office than you do. It's just kind of a thing. So Stuart, really, really well lit office there. Appreciate that. On behalf of DTE, thank you for funding everything, apparently, in the Clarkston area. Appreciate you. The Schaefers, that's cute. I like Ernie comes in and goes, yeah, I think we're at, no, they probably can't hear us. I think we're on mute. No, we're here. Now, Ernie, you had an old guy moment. I'm sorry, but I'm calling it out. You had an old guy moment. That was you. Anybody notice that the Eastmans aren't together? Got to start spending the rumor bill on that. Look at Vince Matina. Vince Matina is literally sitting in a river, not by a river. He's literally sitting in a river. Your Zoom background makes no sense, Vince. Jeez, oh man. Listen, if you bought Zoom stock, though, you're doing pretty well. Zoom stock is way up, so it's a $5 fine. By the way, if I've said any of your names, it's a $5 fine. And don't think that if you just turn off your camera, Julianne or Ray or Renee Courtwright or the Dell Pup team, that I'm not going to fine you anyway. If your Zoom camera is off, you're fined immediately. By the way, we're still looking for David Archibald. I assume he's just late. Anyway, if you bought stock in Zoom, it's $5. If you still can't find the mute button, it's $5. If you, like me, would pay to control the mute button on these meetings, it's $5. God, I wish I had that control. I talked about if you're wearing a shirt or shorts, pajamas, or boxers underneath your camera view, it's $5. We are moving out of COVID-19. Linda, is that you? You're waving? Linda's apparently wearing Jay's boxers just out of camera view. Keep the cameras up, no more standing. If you put on, let's see, what do I got here? Okay, so we came out of COVID-19 lockdown. Most of the places came out yesterday. So if you've already visited a restaurant, it's $5. That's good for you. If you visited a restaurant and your first meal was a salad, that's dumb. Why go? That's a $5 fine. If you plan on eating out every day of the week, so you can, quote, help the economy, you're probably just actually hungry as opposed to really righting society's wrongs. That's okay. That's me. If you haven't gotten COVID-19, but you still have stayed home from work for 6 weeks, you get a Ferris Bueller $5 fine. If your first visit out of COVID-19 is to Marshall's to buy bigger sweatpants, it's $5 fine. If you've ever owned a small business, it's $5. If you've ever bought or sold a small business, it's a Bob Lytle $5 fine. If you've ever been thrown out of a business multiple times, it's a $5 Phil Loman fine. If you have ever run a small business into the ground, I'm not looking at anyone in particular, but you know who you are, it's a $5 fine. Sports and summer are here. So if you're glad that it's summer, it's $5. If you've been up north, it's $5. If you've golfed, it's $5. If you've caught a fish, it's $5. If you've caught a fish on a golf course, you're doing it wrong. If you have a farmer's tan, it's $5. If you show your farmer's tan, it's 10. Anybody? I'm going to switch the view here a little bit. Anybody showing their farmer's tan? Nobody. All right. If you have no tan lines, let's see, Phil Loman just perked up. See, there he goes, leaning in. It's no fines. No fines if you have no tan lines. You're more adventurous than I am. And if you haven't complained about the Tigers bullpen yet, it's also $5. What else do we have here? I think we've gotten most of this. I have most of the fun just watching all of you try to figure out Zoom. Tim, I appreciate you being outside, kind of flexing on us. Tim lives in a nice neighborhood. That's really great, Tim. Appreciate that. And thank you all for, and listen, Wayne, I'm going to call you afterwards and work on your angles. A lot about angles here, team. A lot about angles. You notice my angle eliminates the double chin, tries to make it look a little thinner, just give me a little bit of help. This is the kind of angle you're looking for, Wayne. I'll work with you afterwards. All this money goes to charities. We're struggling a little bit because we haven't had all of our normal meetings and normal events. So if you would be so kind as to put $5 in, we would appreciate it. And thank you for giving me a couple minutes. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Brian. Moving on, David Erdley, I want to thank you for continuing to organize our local speakers to bring us up to date on what's happening in our community. And David, I think today you've got kind of a tag team set up with Mayor Barnett and Chief Shettenholm responding to recent protests and the civil unrest following the death of George Floyd. So with that, I will turn it over to the mayor and the chief.
I'd be happy to defer to the chief to get us started, as he is probably more of the expert on this, and I'll follow your lead, Chief.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, there is no excuse, obviously, for the actions of those officers involved in Mr. Floyd's tragic death in Minneapolis. It's appalling to watch. It shouldn't have happened, and police departments all over the nation are taking steps to prevent that type of activity from happening in their own cities, including Rochester and the sheriff's office and all over the place. because we know that the actions of one affect all of us, and we just cannot tolerate that type of behavior. I mean, even as bad as the one officer's actions were that caused the death, and they'll be held accountable for that, and it will go through the court system as it should, is the inaction by those other 3 officers. They have a sworn duty to uphold the law and to protect and serve and to save the life of those that are out there, and they had a duty to do that, and also failed in that mission as well. So again, there's just no, and I think that's what's so struggling about this situation as opposed to maybe some of the others that have gone before, is there is no, you just can't find something that says, okay, I maybe I can see how this happened. This one is just, there's just no excuse for it. So then the next question you have is well, Chief, what steps are you taking to prevent that type of thing from happening here in Rochester? And I think that starts right from the very beginning. We do a very exhaustive hiring process. We test our people to make sure they're smart enough to work here. We do a thorough interview through a panel of members here in the department to interview them and to get to know them, and looking for a particular mindset or temperament to work here in Rochester. And then probably most importantly is we do a very, very thorough background investigation. We go back to high school, we talk to the people that they went to school with, to colleges. If it requires out of state, we go out of state, because we want to, talking to somebody for a short period of time is not enough. We need to know what made this person the person that they are up to this point. And so that background check is very, very important. We talk to employers, we talk to neighbors, we do a home interview to see what their home life is. I think it's really become the hardest part of hiring right now, because to be honest with you, we can't get everybody to pass. We look at these as 25-year decisions. We don't take those decisions lightly, and it's not hard for us to take a pass because we don't want to take chances. People's lives are on the line. There's a reputation to uphold and a standard to uphold, and so for that reason, we don't take those chances. Once we get to that point, we then psychologically evaluate them. We send them to a police psychologist who interviews them and again, looking for that particular temperament. And this whole time, we're looking for people that have a problem-solving philosophy, that people that are great communicators. The biggest and best weapon that a police officer carries with them is their mouth. Can they get to a situation, size it up properly, and then talk themselves out of trouble, be able to diffuse situations so that physical force and violence is not needed. So those are the things that we work on from the start. We have then an exhaustive field training program where we put those folks with people that we specifically train to be able to guide the new officer on their way to the way that we do things in Rochester and the standards and the service that we require. We then also do through supervision to make sure that they're doing things the way we want them to do. We have very few citizens' complaints here, and when we do have them, they're mostly, I would say, referred to as attitude complaints. The officer could have been nicer to me. I wish the officer had listened to me. I wish the officer had done X, Y, and Z as opposed to A, B, and C. So we work through those and we look at those as learning experiences. We probably have more internal complaints than we do outgoing complaints, in the sense that our supervisors, through review of our in-car videos or fellow officers make a comment or something that we see where we review those situations with those officers, young and old, to try to improve behavior. We had a recent complaint, and when it all boiled down, the complainant was most mad because the officer rushed into the house and didn't get a mask on. That was the source of the complaint. Ironic, they mentioned some other things about, things that the officer did and said. In that same scenario, we also received a compliment, and they couldn't believe that the officers there were so reserved, that they handled themselves professionally. And so you see kind of the give and take that's required. We had, on one hand, we had somebody who was maybe a little displeased with the service we had, and we had someone that was watching this situation, complimenting the officers in the restraint that they used. And so we kind of have to work through both sides of those situations when we find them. But we also, we get questions about use of force. We train on use of force as well. We have a force continuum so that we are making sure that we're not overstepping our bounds when it comes to using force. And when force is used, officers are required, depending on the type of force, to make a specific report, so that, again, that triggers a review of that use of force to see whether it's within policy or not. We're also part of a voluntary use of force reporting system throughout it's actually managed through the FBI, so it's a situation that happens throughout the United States. That's voluntary in nature, but we've signed on to be part of that because I think that data is important to capture so that those incidents that where a serious injury or death occur are reported and tracked. We have not had to make any reports to that system. And in the 12 years that I've been here, I can't recall a situation where we would have had a use of force that would have resulted in a serious injury. And certainly we have not had any in custody deaths here at the Rochester Police Department. So I think, again, we have in-car cameras. We recently upgraded those last year so that they have 3 cameras, one in the back that covers the prisoner compartment, 2 in the front, so that one is a wide-angle view of what happens to try to catch more information. We carry a wireless microphone with us, again, so that we can record the audio of those conversations and what's happening. We sized our system appropriately so that we can add body cameras, which I'm sure is something that will happen in an upcoming budget year for sure. But we plan for that as we watch that technology and the privacy concerns that come with it evolve. So, I mean, I am very proud of the work that we do at the Rochester Police Department and the product, if you will, of police services that we provide. And we do that, I believe, not only meeting the needs of the public that we serve, but we also do it professionally, and we get a lot of good compliments. We get very few complaints. And I think that's a tribute to the men and women that work here and the selection and supervision that goes into their careers here. When you talk about the protests themselves, I couldn't be more proud of the community and the folks that came out. We certainly support their right to get their message out. It's a very important message, and we certainly have done everything we can to support that. What's particularly gratifying is the youth that have come out. A number of these have been led by kids from our schools, or certainly younger people, and I think that does my heart good to see that they're interested in this important issue and will come out, march, and let their voices be heard. So they've been, each and every one of them has been very peaceful and moving, and we've been pleased to have a part in those and to assist them in making sure that they're done peacefully. Mr. Mayor, would you like to?
Sure. Thanks, Chief. Appreciate that.
Comment on top of that.
I would agree. And let me try to maybe make my comments in two segments. First, sort of how we're dealing with things locally, and then maybe from the national perspective that I'm blessed to be able to see. I would agree with the chief in terms of the local. I don't want to look at myself. I can agree with the chief on the local aspect that our cities have done it really well. I've been mayor for 14 years. Chief City's been chief for 12. And I don't know if you'd agree, Chief, but that was the biggest protest that I'd ever seen in the city's history, with our folks estimated about 500 to 600 people marching through downtown Rochester and through Rochester Hills. Very passionate about the issues that have happened over the last 10 weeks. It should be noted that as we're meeting here right now, George Floyd's funeral is taking place in Houston. And so there's certainly a lot going on. I said I'd start with what's happening locally. So locally, the safety of our community is our number one responsibility and our number one priority. I see Councilman Hetrick is on the phone here. The council reaffirmed this yesterday in their, last night in their meeting of their priorities, that public safety is our number one focus. It's really the number one thing we're sworn to take an oath to as an elected official. And I think our track record here is really, really strong. All of you should be advocates, should know this information, and should spread it. Rochester Hills, again, and I'm sure Rochester is with us in these statistics, but it's the statistics we use for cities over 50,000 people. We are the safest city in Michigan for the 4th consecutive year. And that is such a building block for so many other things. And so without that, I mean, everything else, so many other things fall apart, but for the fact that you have and live and raise your kids in a safe community. That's important. We have a belief that we value all life in all situations. And that is kind of the foundation for how we operate. Now, as you know, here we have the Oakland County Sheriff's Department, 62 sworn officers here every day in the city, making sure that the things that we're used to happening here in the city go smoothly. As it relates to the protests, I would agree with the chief. I marched in the one on last Thursday, and it was wonderfully organized. I took a lot of pictures of protesters taking pictures with the officers, thanking the officers. I took a lot of pictures of officers taking pictures with protesters and thanking the protesters. And you don't see that replicated across the country like you do here. And that doesn't just happen. I mean, people are just as passionate here as they are in other cities across the country, but there's a relationship here, I think, between law enforcement and the community. In particular, this particular march was led by students that I think made a strong difference. We didn't say, no, you can't march. We didn't say, gosh, some business owners may not like that. What if it gets out of hand? What if there's an F word on a sign? We said, listen, let's work with us. Let's try to figure out a way that this can keep everyone safe, those involved and those, motoring past. And I think we came up with that. Switching hats now to the national level, this has really been interesting for me. As you know, as president of the Conference of Mayors, it's been a really challenging last 3 months with the worst pandemic in 100 years, the worst economic recession in 95, and now the worst street unrest in 50, all layered on top of each other, all impacting each other, all creating certainly some challenges for elected officials. I've been on the phone almost every day, certainly, with a mayor that's had major issues. This morning I was on the phone with the mayor of Atlanta. Yesterday I was on the phone with the mayor of Houston talking about his preparation. Yesterday, Mr. Floyd his viewing was yesterday. Today's his funeral. I'll be talking to the mayor of Houston later tonight just to see how things went. I talked to the mayor of St. Paul, Minnesota, a couple days ago. Los Angeles, I said Atlanta, Boston, all folks that have had protests. And really what we do on these calls is we try to understand from each other what's happening and how it's happening. 10 days ago, when this was incredibly hot and incredibly raw, the challenge was keeping groups like Antifa and others out from the protesters that were in the cities protesting relatively peacefully. These outside elements were coming in and agitating police, provoking police, looking for a response, and oftentimes getting it. And then when I was talking to Mayor Walsh from Boston, he said what was interesting in Boston is the protesters, so the Bostonians, separated themselves from these outside elements and didn't really want to be associated with them, wanted to carry on their protest and what was important to them, but also didn't want to be connected with the folks that were firing and throwing and being more aggressive. This is a really challenging topic, and I'll try and stop here in just a minute to leave time for some Q&A, because you might look at even this screen, frankly, of mostly lily white people in a pretty white community saying, you know, this doesn't happen here. We don't have to worry about racial injustice here. You know, we kind of got things under control. And the statistics that I said at the beginning would tend to, you know, lead you down that path, that we have a safe community. We don't deal with rampant crime here, thankfully. But the ideas of systemic injustice still exist here in a city like Rochester Hills. That's why you had 500 or 600 people come to the streets, reflective of our community, saying this isn't right, this has to stop, something has to change. I had 2 emergency meetings last week with mayors across the country, and the result of that was I stood up a group that just so happens to be on the front page of the Oakland Press today, and it was in the Washington Post yesterday. I created a working group called Police Reform and Racial Injustice. And I picked 3 mayors and 3 police chiefs to serve on this committee to move us forward. I picked the mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot, the mayor of Cincinnati, John Cranley, and the mayor of Tampa. The mayor of Tampa, Chief Shedhelm, is a 31-year veteran of the police force and was the first female chief in the city of Tampa. So 3 folks with some pretty good vantage point. I picked 3 police chiefs, and I also used Chief Ramsey, who's a consultant with the Conference of Mayors. He's the face you see on CNN about every 2 hours talking. He was a former chief of Washington, D.C. and of Philadelphia. And the purpose of this group is to look at past policies, what we've done out of Ferguson, what we've done. President Obama did some work on police reform, and see what needs to be updated while getting some of these new voices and new conversations in what's happening around the country right now. Of course, on one side, on the far left, and I'll try to not be political in this, there is a movement to defund the police. And that has its roots in some, obviously, some very systemic distrust of authority. It is not held by the majority of folks, even if you listen to, of course, President Trump, but even Vice President Biden has said he doesn't support defunding the police. But my good friend Eric Garcetti in Los Angeles has just reduced the police budget by $150 million to put more money into like counseling and social work and trying to take some of the work that police officers do and slide it over into other areas where other people might be able to do that work. It is yet to be seen how that will work. He hasn't defunded the police department. He's lessened the funding to try to reallocate it to some other places. And you may see some things like that happen. The city of Minneapolis voted to defund their police department, although no one knows what that means. Because quite honestly, as you well know, if you were to defund, I mean, if I were to say, you know what, we're going to defund the police department, that is going to have 0 impact. It's probably going to have an opposite impact on crime. There's still going to be a domestic case. So there's still going to be, there's still going to be all sorts of crime that continues on whether or not you have a police force funded or you don't. There's going to be a lot of conversation about that. And unfortunately, that political rhetoric is ratcheted up because, the Republicans sort of see that as red meat, and the Democrats, I think, are trying to figure out where they are on this issue of racial injustice and police reform, because there's a lot of, the police union is in the mix of this. And so there's a lot going on there. Let me leave you with this as a personal challenge to each of you here, because it's a challenge I took as a white man of privilege. And it doesn't mean I'm wealthy. I'm not wealthy, but I understand that my kids are growing up with essentially white privilege. I watched a movie called The Hope You Give. And I would encourage all of you to watch that movie. I took my staff, my entire staff, we rented actually didn't rent, but we borrowed the Imagine Theater, and I had all 350 of my employees watch The Hate You Give. And afterwards we had a person come and talk to us about what it meant. And this movie is about a cop that shoots an African-American student who is reaching for a hairbrush. And then it talks about all the things that happen from that. The reaction of the officers, how the officers rallied behind them, how people in the community rallied behind the officers, the family challenges that happen. It's a really well done movie. It's called The Hope You Give, and I would encourage you to, The Hate You Give, I'm sorry, The Hate You Give, The Hate You Give, The Hate You Give, and I would encourage you to watch that. Yep, and it's free to view, and we're going to send you a link. Maria just told me, so we'll send you a link to do that. And then I would encourage you to just think about how you have these conversations in your own circle of influence. We did this with our team as well, and we said, listen, we're going to have a race for $100, and whoever gets to the $100 first gets it. And everyone's pretty excited about it. Then I said, okay, listen, if you grew up with both parents in your household, take 2 steps forward. If you grew up with access to library books in your house, take another step forward. If you never had to move in your life, take 3 steps forward. And you find out that pretty quickly, generally, Caucasians are much farther ahead. Our brown and black colleagues and friends are much farther behind, and then you say, go. And it's just natural that whether it's access to capital, whether it's education, that there are systemic challenges for minorities in this country to have the same access that all of us have enjoyed as generally as Caucasians in America. So there are so many issues here. I've learned a lot from my colleagues and friends across the country. Admittedly, I come from a vantage point that is biased. And so I'm trying to take some of those biases down. Those 2 boys that are behind me in the pictures, I want them to make their own decisions and understand the blessings they've been given, and never to apologize for those, but understand that not everybody has those. And so I'm happy to answer any questions. I think there's going to be a lot more conversation. I'm excited about my national working group. I've given them till the end of this month to come back to me with a report on what we need to do and what we need to talk about and how we advance this discussion. And I'd love to maybe answer some of your questions here. So I'll stop, Wayne, and appreciate the time today.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Chief. You know, this isn't an easy discussion to have, but it's a necessary one, especially for us as Rotarians. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to put to Brian or Chief Shettenhelm?
If I can just add for just a second, you know, and we certainly would appreciate any questions that you might have. But I will tell you that, you know, wherever we've gone, and it's among protesters, it's among fellow Rotarians, there's just been a lot of thank yous that appreciate your services and things like that that have come to myself and to the officers, and we certainly appreciate that. We know that we have work to do. I don't know if you've had a chance to, you know, see our signs out in front of the station. It's the little things that we believe we can do to try to demonstrate our commitment to this issue and to being out front and stand up to be part of the people that are going to stop this the first. And it's just such an important issue among the men and women who work here, to speak well for our profession, to treat people properly, and to again, we can't do our job if the public does not respect the police. That just has to happen.
Could you give us a link to that movie?
Yeah, our team, I'll send it out. I'll get it to Wayne, and then Wayne can send it out.
Yeah, I'll send it out through Club Runner to everybody.
Great.
Anyone else have any questions?
I did have a question. And I loved hearing what you had to say, both of you. I really appreciate it. Just to give you some background on me, I don't know many of you know, my stepfather is actually a retired police officer from Saginaw. And so I basically grew up at the FOP. That's, you know, when you're part of the Blue, that's your family. My children are Black, and my father is Bolivian, and he came here when he was 18. I am really, really fortunate to have so many viewpoints and understand it differently, because the people that I know and love personally have been affected by so many things. I know that it may seem like there is not as much racism in Rochester, but the things that have happened, even to me, just as a Hispanic woman in Rochester, it does exist every day. And unfortunately, there are people who, well, fortunately, really, you don't see it because it doesn't come towards you. So I was wondering if maybe for your mayoral council, will you be talking to people who maybe experience things differently than you, just so that you might be able to see things that you never knew existed, not to any fault of you, just, you know, maybe you don't get yelled at when you're in Walmart and they say, ma'am, you cannot buy that with a bridge card. I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't have a bridge card. Or stopped every time you leave to be searched while others are left. And these are things that happened at the Walmart in Rochester to me just in the past few months. So it exists, and I would love for you, because I think that you have a beautiful way of listening, and I hope that you will listen to those that maybe experience things a little different, and just wonder if there's a plan for that.
That's a great question and a great statement, and thank you for your courage in even sharing that. We know that the problems exist. I mean, it wasn't too long ago, it was even in the paper this week, that we had the gentleman that fired a gun at the African-American young student who was looking for directions, that put our city on the map for a week nationally on this topic. And so, yeah, I mean, part of it is first of all, recognizing there's, you know, that there are lots of viewpoints. That's one of the reasons I really like this, The Hate You Give movie, because it's not a movie written just from one viewpoint. It looks at how this impacts a whole community. And I think will be one of our challenges, Rachel, is to get a lot of viewpoints. It'll be, you know, important for us to get, you know, people who think that the police could do no wrong to people that think there shouldn't be police officers. And we know that there is, you know, valid feelings there on all sides. But we ultimately will try to seek to get as much input as possible. But we also know one of the things that is coming out of Minneapolis, and I got this from the mayor of St. Paul, is that they're saying we want peace, but not necessarily patience. And I think there is now a groundswell of support that we must try and do something more. We can't just come up with plans. There's a thing out now about the 8, what is it called? Chief, you probably know this, the 8 things that we're trying to do to make sure all police departments are promoting these 8 can't wait things about banning chokeholds, requiring de-escalation, and warning before shootings, and a bunch of things that we all do here that aren't necessarily true. In Minneapolis, they still allowed basically chokeholds for officers as a part of their practices. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Rachel, your comments are probably the most poignant mentioned in this hour, and I'll think about them as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Any other questions? For those of you who have got chat available to you, Julianne Morian posted that the movie The Hate You Give is available through the Rochester Hills Library. So that's another source. But as soon as I get the link from Maria Willett, we will forward it to all of you via Club Runner, just so you've got 2 sources for it. Any other questions? There being none, Chief and Mayor, I cannot thank you enough. I can only imagine this was not easy. This was something that it's very necessary. We need to find ways to listen to each other with respect. And I also appreciate your comments about the youth. You know, we all tend to forget that by far our whole Continental Congress Army was made up of teenagers. And I realize that was a different time, but we need to listen to our young people. Thank you to all of you for participating. Meeting adjourned.